Welcome back to the Indie Fighting Games Fest coverage. Last time we looked at the free games available in the sale, but this time I wanted to look at the samples available. The demos section this time around has a ton of really cool stuff that I'd like to share. All of these can be found for free on either itch or Steam. These games vary in levels of completeness, so keep that in mind. I'll try to give you an idea of what's included, but all in all I just want to show off some cool ideas. Let's take a look! I think it's fair to start with the game my audience is probably the most familiar with. As seen in the Rivals Direct, the multiplayer versus version of One Step from Eden, Duelists of Eden, went into alpha testing this weekend. The game is a hybrid competitive deck builder and fighting game in the same vein as Mega Man Battle Network. You can create a deck of up to 12 cards as well as bringing along 2 artifacts. More cards means a faster reload at the cost of consistency, and not bringing artifacts gives you extra mana. But it's usually good to bring along something that helps with the deck's idea. Balancing your deck is half the battle. Making sure you always have enough mana and have enough solid synergy is a must. The game gives you a pre-built deck for each character, which isn't exactly great, but it usually gives you an idea of what the character wants to do. And speaking of characters, while the decks are open to make however you like, each character has their own weapon and sub-weapon that can be used at any time, something incredibly important to how they play. These still cost mana to cast though, so keep that in mind. The roster so far is pretty great too. Every character from One Step from Eden returns, with the exception of Gunner and Shopkeeper for some reason. There's one brand new original character, Charetta, whose mid-range attacks let her condition the opponent quite well. Not only that, but 3 guest characters have joined the fight. Maiden and Spell's Dreadworm, Freedom Planet's Nira, and Rivals of Aether's Maple all make an appearance, with attacks from their home games. These guests are all really cool, but bias in mind, I do think Maple takes the cake. She has an inconsistent primary that puts a seed on the opponent, letting you wrap them on the next big hit. You can also spend the seed to pull you and your opponent right to the center, allowing her to hit with a strong melee attack or lock the opponent down again and reset their pressure. For my short time with the game, I can already tell this game is very hard. It seems super simple at first, but very quickly ramps up. Spacing your attacks while trying to avoid the opponents is much easier said than done. You do have a few defensive tools, but neither of them are foolproof. Dodging gives you a brief moment of invincibility, perfect for dodging single-hit attacks with great timing. However, multi-hit attacks absolutely bully dodge. Shields are also a thing and work like they do in Smash, draining over time and leaving you completely vulnerable if it breaks. A lot of attacks will shred through shields though, so be extremely careful. I've lost a good chunk of my games, but I definitely feel like I'm improving, and it's just a fun system to master. If you don't want to master it against opponents, not to fret, there's a training mode to lab combos and synergies, alongside a few single-player modes. There's a standard arcade mode, but the highlight here is Classic, which lets you play a roguelike. After each battle, you have to choose a new card to add to your deck out of a set of 3, looking for synergies or at least avoiding any anti-synergies, leaving a lot of room for creativity. As of now, the game is fairly simple, but what's here is really cool, and there's so many cards I haven't had access to yet. I'm sure with more characters and cards, the full release is sure to be a blast! One game I've been meaning to look at is Blazing Worldstars, and this is the perfect time to talk about it. This was on my radar as one of the artists on the game, Harbage12, is a big player in the Rivals Workshop community. I've been curious of what they were up to, and this demo was certainly a lot of fun. It's a love letter to both classic King of Fighters and modern Street Fighter at the same time. You have 6 buttons, and can chain light buttons into medium and heavy ones. Of course, you also have the traditional special, EX, and super moves. But where things get spicy is with the Warrior Instinct mechanic. This is a spin on the V-Skill and V-Trigger mechanics from Street Fighter V. Unlike those mechanics, using Warrior Instinct does not give you meter, but does cost it. The moves you get out of it, however, often have fantastic utility, making them more than worthwhile. If you do save your meter, you can activate Enhance Mode, providing a significant buff to your character. In this demo, some characters are missing them, so keep that in mind. The game also has staple mechanics like throws and parries that you probably have come to expect. The game itself is pretty simple, and the demo just has the versus and training mode, with 4 characters to play. Mesmerelle is the closest this game has to a Shoto. She has a solid fireball and a powerful reversal, but also some crazier tools like smashing into the ground like a meteor. She can play a pretty mean zoning game with her enhanced mode fireballs and super riding quite a bit. Patrice is a wrestling bear with a huge focus on intense close-up pressure. His attacks are pretty slow and don't follow into each other well, this can often let him frame trap and keeps with the theme of trying to pressure you into letting your guard down and going for the grab. His approach game is pretty terrible, but he does have a few risky ways to approach with armor. Matthias is one of the more tricky characters in the roster, with an all-rounder playstyle and a big focus on mix-ups. He's got incredible pressure up close with his sword and a variety of command grabs. And lastly, there's Vale, the flamboyant thief who can contort themselves for some incredible range. They remind me a lot of Merkava, with a lot of quick slaps with huge range. Vale is the most unfinished character as of now, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they have for them in the future. Again, that really is all this demo has, but I do like this preview of it. It's a bit tricky to get the hang of, but combos feel really great, there's a very strong variety of neutral tools, and the visuals are pretty nice. Well, I do have one critique of the visuals. The game has these really ugly white borders, and it's super distracting. This is my only gripe. I think there's a lot of cool stuff here. I just really hope that this gets fixed. I love seeing indie games take a crack at more modern mechanics, and I'd love to see where it goes. Some of the designs for the future characters are super cool, and I can't wait to play them. Now for a game that took me by surprise. Fight.EXE is a very weird game, and you can tell that just by looking at it. No, this game isn't based on the EXE creepypasta scene, although it is rooted in creepypasta. The game takes huge inspiration from the story of Polybius, but you know, as a fighting game. The game's presentation is very goofy, taking on that early computer look. But what this game has beyond the surface is really something special. The game is a 6-button fighter, but with 4 buttons for normals and 2 for special moves. Light Punch can combo into other buttons, but Light Kick is only a poke. There doesn't seem to be command normals, just the basics. Something that I think is pretty funny is the special buttons. Characters have 2 grounded specials as well as an air special done with either button. Normally, special buttons are added in lieu of motion inputs, but Fight.EXE is just built different. Each ground special has 2 EXE versions that are done with quarter circle forward or back. These variations are super important, are used in most combos, and open up a lot of possibilities. I love how 2 versions of the same special can be applied in wildly different situations. For example, Duffa's crossbow can shoot either a lightning or an ice arrow. The lightning arrow is great for contesting zoning or ending combos, whereas the ice arrow is a slow projectile you can chase behind that also starts combos. These do cost meter, but the meter gain in this game is off the charts. Meter pretty much just serves as a way to prevent you from spamming tools in neutral you're not supposed to. Just 1 or 2 hits will build enough meter for your EXE moves, so go crazy! And speaking of meter, each character can also do a super by pressing both special buttons. These aren't anything crazy, but they do solid damage. The demo has 4 playable characters. Panic Corvid, the undead farmer, fights up close and personal, with slow but powerful swings and an armored grab. His EX Harvest lets him pressure from a distance to get back into the fight. Duffa Snick is a very strange design. Apparently he's supposed to be a brilliant adventurer who fights with a variety of gadgets. He's the game's zoner, with a huge variety of projectiles for every distance, as well as a jetpack to let him get it in and out. Kronian is a fish man that can rush the opponent down with his shield bash, as well as a counter to punish any risky moves. And Delphia Denny is a huge bull that overwhelms the opponent with some insane damage on brutally slow but massive attacks. The arcade mode also has a few other characters, like Dr. Snick who has a gun meter, and Kaz, the rock and roller. In addition to the versus and training mode, there are story modes for Corvid and Duffa. At first, this story mode is just your normal arcade mode, but then things start to get, weird. If you want to play this, you might want to go in blind and experience it for yourself. But it's also not that major. If not, then here goes. After a few rounds, the game changes entirely for a bit, to a first-person perspective. I did this with Corvid first, and this genuinely unsettled me the first time. You actually have to walk around and explore this bizarre and corrupt 3D area until you complete the objective, and then things go back to normal, at least for a bit. Well, as normal as a game where you fight in a movie theater while an actual movie plays in the background can be. And then you fight the 2 final bosses, Void Queen and Force, who are both incredibly difficult. There's also a few more first-person scenes in between these fights to break up the pace, which is great. It's a really awesome subversion that caught me completely off guard and made it clear to me that I cannot ever expect where this game will go. I really want to see where this goes, though. It's a little janky, but in all honesty, I think a little bit of jank is what ties this game together. It feels off, but in a good way. Moves are ridiculous, attacks have strange weight to them, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Just something so different from any aesthetic I've seen before, and I can't wait to see more. If there's one classic fighting game I think is super underrated, it has to be Cyberbots. Sure, the combat is simple and the movement's a little bit too strong for its own good, but it does so many unique things that nobody's really tried to replicate. At least, I haven't seen it replicated until Kronian Titans. Kronian Titans is the test game for a Godot framework called Castagne, which is a tool to help with the development of new fighting games. But not to say Cronian doesn't stand out on its own though. The game uses 5 buttons, 3 for normals, 1 for boosting, and 1 for your weapons. Weapons aren't just a simple one-tap tool in this game, but instead you hold the button to gain access to a whole arsenal, with each attack button doing something unique with combinations with it. Some characters have even more tools by holding different directions, so keep that in mind. Combos in this game are extremely freeform, but can be awkward at first if you don't know what you're doing. This is because you can't jump cancel your attacks, but you can boost cancel them. You have limited boosts, but they come back fast. Boost can even be used defensively to avoid projectiles. I'm sure if you learn the game, you can do some crazy stuff, but honestly, I'm just not there yet. Lastly, the game has a fuel system. Fuel can be used to either go into overdrive or attempt to escape from combos with Genesect Parry. Overdrive grants character-specific buffs to your mech, though admittedly, I'm not sure if this has been implemented for every character quite yet. The burst equivalent of this game is kinda interesting, as it's a counter. If you don't attack the parry, you get all the time in the world to reset your pressure and continue the combo. As such, it makes waiting to parry during a committal option extremely important. The game has a few more quirks, like how throws will always beat armored moves, but that's the main mechanics of the game for the most part. The roster in this demo consists of 6 characters, 4 normal ones and 2 bonus ones. Something I think is really cool is how there are different makes of mech that share gimmicks with each other. The Amblitz units have polarity, where their light and medium specials power each other up. The Lupo units have wheels that let them maintain full movement while attacking. Since there's only one, it's hard to tell exactly what the Sealedver units will do, but if I were to guess, it seems like they're all focused on their normals having follow-ups by pressing the button again. But even with these similarities, the characters all play very differently. Amblitz Assault is an aggressive rushdown that uses its projectiles to cover it coming in. Once in, it can cancel its sword into itself for crazy block strings and intense damage. On the contrary, Amblitz Bomber is a zoner with very powerful keep-away tools. It has powerful gun normals that can be cancelled into each other, as well as huge area coverage. The character's main game plan is to use their projectiles to force an opponent to boost in and then punish that reckless approach. Amblitz Mass Production is a joke character of sorts. They play like Amblitz Assault, but they lack the polarity system or the sword attacks. Instead, they just have a simple DP. Lupo Varmego is a boxing character with a huge emphasis on controlling the ground. They want to poke with big buttons and then reverse beat into their weaker ones to remain completely safe. Their air game is pretty bad, but that's made up for by having a ground game second to none. The Lupo has a hidden variation based on a beta version of the character. This one retains the ground focus, but instead of being focused on fast but short punches, they have longer range normals alongside a unique spin mechanic, where all of their specials have this moving spin before they start, and can either be cancelled into another spin, or go into one of 2 follow-ups. Lastly is the Sealedver Command, the heavyweight of the game. It's much slower than the other mechs, but has a fantastic pressure game with its sword rekkas, can flood the screen with projectiles, and is just an all-around nightmare to contest. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and you will learn this very quickly. The one single-player mode in this demo is fighting the captain, who pilots the Sealedver Command, and is a brutal opponent. There's a few ways to cheese them, but if you try to play honest, beware they can and will beat you down. Their combo routes are crazy, and they really give you a sample of what you can do with the game. You unlock some bonus stuff after winning with every character, such as concept art. All in all, yet another really solid and fun title. The movement is the real highlight here, but there's a lot of fun to be had with the general gameplay loop too. Every character plays fairly unique from one another, and the potential to learn and grow the meta is limitless. With this one, in all honesty, I'm more interested in watching it than playing. But I'm just super excited to see what this game looks like at high level. It's going to be really cool to see what can be done here, I just know it. And last but certainly not least, we have a game I knew almost nothing about, Resistance 2040. And after playing it just a little bit, I think I'm in love. This game takes place in a dystopian future where everyone fights in virtual reality. A group of freedom fighters wish to revolt against the admins and create a better world for everyone. In order to complete their plan though, they have to enter a fighting tournament where the winner gets to meet the developers of the simulation. And that's the premise you have to work off of. The game takes full advantage of its setting, with some amazing aesthetics and even incorporating it into the gameplay. Because this takes place in virtual reality, characters can respawn and keep fighting near instantly. Because of this, your goal is only sometimes to kill your opponent. When the opponent is downed, it's about trying to make a mad dash to the enemy goal Nidhogg style. Unlike that game though, as soon as the opponent respawns, it's back into the fight. The game has a really clever way of rewarding players who are better at combat while also preventing stalemates. The time it takes for you to respawn is increased with every death you get, so you have to make your plays count. The gameplay is pretty simple, with only 2 attack buttons, but what the game does with its simple mechanics and how it presents them is fantastic. Characters can attack in all the normal ways you'd expect, but there are dash attacks, throws, and specials that as of now are all charge motions. Anytime a player wins a trade, the game provides these really cool cinematic freeze frames explaining exactly why you got hit. These help you plan your strategy and act accordingly. All it takes is one good combo to kill the opponent, so you really have to pay attention to what's hitting you and learn fast. You also have to keep track of the terrain, as there are several different types you can choose from, and each type drastically changes how a match might play out. Characters with better air options are going to love the high ground, and characters who can poke with strong anti-airs love being able to poke from below. Zoning is also much less effective on uneven terrain. This really does change a lot about the mechanics, and I'm a big fan. One thing I didn't get a chance to play with is the Twitch integration, letting Twitch chat change the rules of the game on the fly. I really hope there's a tournament that enables this at some point. I think it'd be really funny. Out of all the games, this is the one that I want to play more of. There just isn't that much to the demo, just 2 characters and a few stages, but what's here is so much fun. I hope some of the other characters can add even more interesting playstyles to the game. Picking random causes you to change character every time you respawn, and I'd love to see how that plays out with a couple more characters. In general, I'll definitely be keeping a close eye on this one. And I think that's where I'm going to leave this one off. Next time, I'll take a look at some of the paid titles for the event. It'll probably be released after the sale ends, but I'm excited to show off what's in store nonetheless. For now, did you get the chance to try any of these titles? If so, let me know what you thought of them. Until next time!